I want to introduce myself. My name is Markian here. You can call me Mark, and I am a PhD in linguistics, mainly in Germanic languages, and I also have a TESOL certificate, like a teacher. I'm a teacher of English to speakers of other languages. Also, I'm associate professor and director of like a small school, an English school. The name of the school is A to Z English. And also I have a YouTube blog. I'm fond of grammar very much, and I like to make videos at least. I like to make a video at least once per week. Yeah. And today, I hope that you guys are doing well. And the topic for today's webinar is modern English grammar materials for effective learning. Okay, so nice to meet you too. And we'll speak about the ways how to teach effectively. And the question is how to get students more interested in in grammar, because as you know, grammar is really boring, and grammar seems to be boring for students. And how not to make them bored. And the question for us, and the very important thing, is how to conduct classes more efficiently. And because there are tons of textbooks like on the internet, like in stores, and you don't know. Sometimes I'm lost in all these materials. And how to use really modern English and to apply all these modern languages. So I'd like to say about myself that I gained a TESOL diploma, and it changed my mind. It completely changed my mind to teaching English, and especially after my trip to the United Arab Emirates, that I was a teacher there for a while, and they taught. I gained a lot of experience, and I understood that our methods of teaching are completely different, and we have to use the communicative approach and all the modern approaches, all the visual aids in teaching English. So first, we'll talk about general information about online resources like learning images, tests, textbooks, etc. So I'd like to say that I'm not a fan of textbooks because some students might even have some phobias. They don't like to be taught by the book, and I really prefer some learning images where the information is brief, with some pictures, with some examples, really colorful pictures, and they are really useful for visuals, and you can memorize these materials really in an easy way. So secondly, effectiveness of modern materials in a learning process. I will present to you with different materials and how to apply them in class. Also, I will give you best grammar tests. It's mainly Oxford editions, the Oxford editions, and then we'll move on to discussions on grammar tenses, and mainly I'm a fan of ESL discussions. I'll give you the link to the site where you can have not just the discussions on grammar, but it will be a no-brainer for you to, when it's, for example, a topic tourism, you can talk about tourism. When it's a topic like elephants, you will speak about elephants with your students. And we'll talk about methods of applying images in teaching students. Then different functions. You know that the functions are the most boring stuff for students, and I'll give you some examples of functions and some examples, real examples to the functions, and of course modern approaches to teaching parts of speech, like it was mentioned. And and I'll give you we'll sum up, and I will give you my contacts. So first of all, I would like to draw your attention to one edition. This is American English at State. It was designed by American English speakers, and this edition is really in use and really helpful. There are a lot of grammar functions there, examples, colorful geometrical figures, colorful paintings, formulas, and they are really brief. So let me show you. This is just a general introduction to verb tenses, to grammar tenses, and you can see that here are some examples, and here is the formulas how to form this or that tense. If you decided to teach them present progressive, here you can see that there are some geometrical figures on the image, and like a rectangle, a circle, triangle, and all of them are of different colors. This is good for memorization, and you can see different images here. And it would be awesome if you give them to your students. Also, here is the formula how to form this present progressive or present continuous, and here is like a rule, you know, that stative verbs are not used in the progressive, and also, like in addition, you can speak on the stative verbs. You can give them such a colorful table where there is a panorama of all stative verbs in English, and if you want to elaborate them in particular, one by one, you can use these images. Here are some stative verbs and examples to them. You can also ask them to provide their own examples to the stative verbs, and they will understand them in a proper way. So here is some more. Here are some more stative verbs, and so on and so forth. So if you can also use this template. This template you can have for yourself, and you can give them some sentences for translation, or you can elaborate this template in such a way. You can take a sentence, for example, she is eating lunch now, and you can ask them to make up a negative sentence. And if they ask you how to form a negative sentence in the present progressive, you can use another addition. So this addition is Ella's language, and here you can see that it's a very clear template. how to form how to form positive sentences in present progressive and negative sentences, how to form some questions, different types of questions. So these additions are good are really helpful for forming the present continuous. Also, you can ask them to make up special questions, question to the subject, like alternative questions and tag questions. And you can elaborate with them all these sentences and different functions. You see that you can do it in the same way with the present simple. You see that there is one more template of the present simple, very colorful with different pictures and with geometrical figures. So if you want something extra, something additional, you can use the addition perfect English grammar, like images. So my hobby is to collect all the images from Facebook groups, and I sorted them in different folders. So I sent all these sorted materials to you, and you can use them in teaching students. And why is this addition good? Because it provides you some markers that are not in other additions. So here is, for example, future timetables. Yes, and if you want to use the present simple with these markers, you can see that use with this evening at 10 o'clock tomorrow. So it's very clear. If you want to come up with more examples, with more examples of the markers, you can write them more examples. But you can just spring from these markers, and it would be a piece of cake for you to deliver this information to your students. This addition, I am not a fan of this addition, but what is good here is that you can use, you can give them some line graphs. Line graphs are good for understanding the real time for students. So, for example, if it's an action that is happening now, here you can see a circle, and the action is happening now. And if it's a continuous action currently in progress, so here you can see the line, and students will understand the tense better. And some of them don't really know that always can be used in the continuous as well. So you see that repetition and irritation, when it's there are some examples here. So like he's always leaving dishes in the sink. So when it's really annoying for others, we can use them always in the continuous. So here's some like regular action here, yes, but still it's present continuous. What else? Also here there are some templates that give us a clear vision, and the clear vision where we have to use present continuous and present simple. So, for example, the water is boiling, can you turn it off? So here is like one example of the present continuous, and the similar example, but in the present simple, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. You can say that here we have a regular action, and here is judging by the situation, we use the present continuous. It's very clear. and very useful for students. Also, to cement everything in memory, I would advise you to use Oxford University Press. I also made up a separate folder for you, and you can use all grammar senses depending on the level of student. There are 4 levels in grammar sense at Oxford University Press edition, so you can use 4 folders. And if you want something extra, you know, this edition, Murphy, Essential Grammar in Use, you can also give them some exercises from these books. So, as an example of tests from Oxford University Press. So here is a basic level. You see that here you have multiple choice in part 1. Students have to choose the correct answer. Then part 2, they have to find the error in each sentence and correct them. And part 3 is the task on logic in dialects. So here it's very convenient for you because you can use also some answer keys in your answers. But how do I usually do? It's if I am teaching online, I make a print. I take a print screen and I send them this print screens without answer keys. And in this way, we'll cement all these tenses in our memory and refresh them in our memory. Simple present is like a little bit higher level. You see that it's more complicated. The same tasks. And here is a general test on the present when you took all the present tenses, the present simple, present continuous, present perfect, and present perfect continuous. You can give them a general test on all the tenses. The first task is a multiple choice, as you see. The second one is you have to what? To complete to open the brackets. So, like here is to put the correct form of the verb in parentheses, and the third task is to match response to a question below. Also, here is one more task to correct mistakes. If you want, you can also give some essays to them, but it's just not maybe for the NOAA, but if you have some students whom you prepare for the IELTS, these essays could be useful for them. And some answer keys to all these tasks. Also, if you want to practice this grammar orally, you can ask them different questions. For example, what do you know about the present simple, or what functions do you know of the present simple, and so on and so forth. So you can understand whether a student understood the material or not. So you can use a multi-pronged approach to this. And these discussions are from the site ESL discussions. They are really helpful. Maybe if I can, I will give you a link now to this site. If you receive the site, let me know, so you can see a lot of discussions, and they are really useful in the modern communicative approach. So you can see that there is a present perfect discussion, and different you can discuss them on different topics, and these materials were also designed by native speakers, and you can be sure that all these phrases are in use. Maybe you have some questions. I'm ready to answer. Okay, thank you. So irregular verbs. As to irregular verbs, you can also use the American English at State edition, but I also made my own presentation where I split all the irregular verbs into 6 groups. And you can use my presentation if you want, or you can use also these templates. These templates are really great because they provide some examples to base forms, simple past and past participle that you can't meet in other templates. And you can also watch my video where I just crack some jokes, maybe like on YouTube on irregular verbs. I can give you the link to my blog. At the end of this presentation, you can subscribe if you want. You can find this video on irregular verbs. They gained more views than any other videos, like from my blog. So also there are some examples here: irregular verbs 1, irregular verbs 2. I'm also like a practical person, and I give more practice in my class. Of course, maybe theory, I'm not a fond of theory so much. Maybe theory is important, but frankly speaking, I adore practice, because practice and I try to involve students in conversation, in interaction, in even if it's such a boring topic as grammar or irregular verbs. I'm trying to discuss this topic with my students. So you see that there are like a colorful picture, even irregular verbs. It's a very cool addition. So some verbs followed by gerunds. Don't forget that verbs can be followed both by gerunds and by infinitives. Also, this is a very important topic. Not just we don't have to teach just tenses, but also focus our attention on these nitty-gritties, as they make a lot of mistakes in this aspect of grammar. So you see that it's clear written that what is a gerund, what the gerund is, what the infinitive is, and here are some examples of gerunds and infinitives. Also, don't forget about phrases with about and gerunds, or like phrases. I mean, the verb plus the preposition plus infinitive, and the verb plus object plus infinitive. There are so you have to take into consideration all these aspects and not to forget about all of them. You can also give some materials from Murphy, like as some extra materials. So these verbs plus prepositions, you can use different materials. You can split them into different groups. So, for example, if the verb look and prepositions, and the verb get and prepositions, and how to use them and apply them in speech, in conversation. Also, don't forget about the zero conditionals, and of course, zero conditionals are not used pretty often, but they could be in tests, in any tests, and your aim is to give all the necessary information to the students, and you can give them these materials. Can you share the link of the site American English at Stake? Because I can't find the one with those templates. Yes, I told you that I collected them from the internet, from Facebook groups. So there are probably no particular sites. They are spread all over the internet. But don't worry, I sorted them in folders for you, and you can use them for free. Yeah. No problem. No problem. Though I must say that you have to be really careful, because on these images, not on these, but I mean sometimes these images can have a lot of mistakes, especially I don't know by whom they were designed, but some editions have tons of mistakes. Maybe they were designed by Indians or Pakistani, or you have to be really careful and to understand what the source of these images. So I collected the best ones, the best of the best for you. That's why you shouldn't worry about them. Okay, some zero conditionals you can use. You can give some examples and the functions of zero conditionals to them, and you can ask them to make up their own examples with zero conditionals. Yes, in Google Drive folder you can find all these editions. Yes, and all these materials. All right, maybe you have some more questions. So one of my favorite topics is conditionals, and there are lots of materials on the conditionals on the internet, and lots of tenses. But my favorite templates are these ones, because it's really succinct and brief, and you see that it gives they give us a lot of functions and a lot of examples. So you have second conditionals, third conditionals, and for elaborating like different the structure. If I were you, you can use this template. This template is really helpful. And what do I do when I want to teach them conditionals? I like to play with them different games. So, for example, I start from the sentence. If I were you, I would study more. And they continue this sentence by starting from if I studied more, I would be really bright. And then another student will say, if I were really bright, I would make a lot of money. Yes, and so this is in a chain fashion, and students really have fun by coming up different examples because they use their imagination, and sometimes their examples are really funny and weird, and we usually have fun in our group. So this activity is really great. So you see, one of my favorite editions is a Woodward edition, English edition. So you see that there are different funny pictures here, and some disgusting food, or like a girl is afraid of stepping on thin ice, and so on and so forth. Yes, we played this game when I was a student. It's really funny. Yes, it's really great. If you compare with all these boring textbooks, they have fun. Okay, and for advanced students or upper intermediate students, you can have this template, and there are some extra examples and functions where you can use will after if. And there are some examples, there are some functions where you can use will after if, when we have annoyance, doubt, uncertainty, or insistence. Also there are some rules about some expressions where after which we don't use the future, like you see, provided that, as long as, in case, on the condition that, but for, and you can give them examples to each one. Make sure you mention mixed conditionals when you can mix type 1, type 2, and type 3. Also, one more template for advanced students with some examples where we can use should after if. Then you can apply a discussion, some discussions on first conditionals, on the first conditional sentences and on the second conditional sentences here. When you, after you took all the grammar, you did all the tests on conditionals, you can speak on the conditionals, and you can cement, you can refresh, that's all in their memory. Also passive voice. How do we teach passive voice? As for me, I take such templates. I close the right side of the passive voice, and first I'm trying to ask them, could you please make up the passive out of from active? And if in this case they'll have more practice, they have no passive variant but just active, and usually for 2 classes like maximum, my students understand the passive voice, because they do them they transfer everything in the passive voice by themselves. So you have to involve them more if you want your classes to be productive and efficient. Okay, the same thing is with this template. You just close the right side, the left side of this template, and or then the right side, and you can practice the passive voice. The passive with get, there are a lot of questions. There can be a lot of questions with get, and you can have this template and you can explain to them all the functions and how you can form get plus participle, and how you can form get plus object plus participle, and different functions. Just for this, to have something done or to get something done, phrases, constructions, you can also give them some more examples from grammar in use, English grammar in use from Murphy, and use and try them all this and give them all these constructions on the board or on documents, on your documents, Microsoft Word or wherever, whatever you use. And of course, involve them in grammar more. Ask them to provide more examples, more and more examples until they understand, and then move forward. You can give them this template just to use some different functions and how to form the passive voice. Yes, and they can use it like in grammar, in sentences, in making up different sentences. One more thing for advanced students, you can also close passive voice, and it is important to mention that because the students, some students think that from all active voices you can make up the passive. No, you can mention about some transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. So intransitive verbs, there are some verbs that are not used in the passive voice. So it's really important to mention. What else? You see that get is used in colloquial English instead of be. So you can ask them to provide more examples with get, and all this folder with the passive voice I will send you. You can use on Google Disk. So some more materials where the passive is used. Tell them the spheres, some spheres where the passive is used in law, in mass media, and tell them that the passive is used in formal speech, in news reports, in formal notices, instructions, and processes. So this topic is rather complicated, as you see, and but it's up to you to choose the right approach. Murphy, like depending on the student's level, you probably know this edition because this edition is really popular, and you can use either the red book or the blue one, but the green one maybe when your students are super advanced. You can use Advanced Grammar in Use by Martin Hughes, but frankly speaking, this book is extremely complicated. There are not so many students who really can do the exercises from this book. Maybe this book is rather for teachers than for students. Also, when your student has a good sense of humor, like a funny bone, you can use this edition, George Woolard, is Grammar with Laughter. And I'd say that every single sentence in every single exercise and activity in this book is very funny, and you can use these materials also in your classes. But don't forget, don't turn the class into a circus. So a little bit laughter is okay, but don't use this book as like the example, like the Bible for grammar, you know. What about Grammar Way or my Grammar Lab? What is your opinion? Grammar Way. Frankly speaking, you know that I have a school, and I'm fond of such editions. If to use the textbooks editions, I buy Speak Out. Maybe you know this British edition. It was really difficult for me to adjust to this book, but after changing my mind, I like this edition more and more. So this is very modern and advanced, and now you can just you can use them without any discs. Like as far as I know, in modern editions, just you should have the access to the internet, and that's it. And I would recommend, if you have a school, if an English school, and you have a lot of students in the group, I would recommend Speak Out as British editions. But this is just like a British curriculum. I'm more like it depends. I usually ask a person, do you need British English or American English? If they say that they need American English more, because all of my students they want to focus on American English. But if it's the no, probably that British English is more useful. So you take this edition, Speak Out, and this edition is really, really helpful for ZNO. Okay, so if you don't have any questions on the tenses, a few words about some parts of speech. I really prefer to use such editions as Woodward English, as I've already mentioned, because in this edition you can find different definitions and functions of parts of speech and examples, and you can find different structures, like either or, neither nor, and with different examples. You can find this Woodward English by the differentiate its Woodward English by the color. Usually they are green, and also American English is state, and like add as many Facebook groups as possible on Facebook. They are really, really helpful. And if these materials are not enough for you, you can download all these pictures and textbooks in those groups. They are great, and you can find a lot of friends there. For example, yesterday I got acquainted with one British guy who is teaching English in China, and it was and we arranged a meeting on Skype like on Friday, and I think that we'll work on different tips how to get our YouTube channels better, and these groups will open like good opportunities for you for teachers, for because as far as I know, nowadays a lot of teachers, English teachers, are going to China and to teach all over the world. And the only thing that you need a TESOL diploma or TEFL or TESOL. So groups are very important for general knowledge, for the development, and to exchange your methods, your teaching methods, your materials, your blogs, etc., etc. Okay, some parts of speech. You know, like a modern approach to English says that there are 8 parts of speech. Like they are noun, a noun, an adjective, adverb, conjunction, pronoun, verb, preposition, and interjection. And here you have the definitions of all these parts of speech. They are of different colors, not to mix them up, and examples, and some examples of the sentences and the markers. So this is a Woodward English edition, a really great edition, and here is neither, either, and how to ask them. I usually do it as with passive voice. I close the right part and I ask them if there are 2 persons, so person A, person B closes the right part, and then they have to respond to person A, and vice versa. So you can also mention that there are different ways how you can respond to this or that person when to agree with that person in a negative way, in negative sentence. Neither was I, neither am I, or nor was I, me neither, nor me, and so on and so forth. There are different examples here. Also articles. Articles is a very complicated topic, you know, and it's good that American English at State provides with really bright, really great materials how to use articles with geographical names. And here you can give maybe like a quiz, like a task for students to fill the gaps, to use the articles here, and to provide them with the example, the correct example. Also, here is the articles with the geographical names with the mountains, and here we have the parts of speech. They are adverbs. You see that it's good for visuals because in this picture, in this materials, you can see a turtle, and that denotes like a very slow motion, and you can just crack some jokes even on parts of speech like an adverbs. And adverbs can be used not only we cannot add ly. Mentioned that we can use adverb always and often are also adverbs, and you can provide plenty of examples of adverbs to understand, for them to understand. Pronoun, the same is with pronoun. And when you covered all these parts of speech, you can test their skills. You can give them a sentence. For example, I sing loudly on the blue stage, and they have to give you, they have to name all the parts of speech, what they can see on the image. But don't forget to close the correct variant. Is it possible to teach prepositions not using Ukrainian? The answer is yes, but you have to be really smart and creative, and use your imagination. American English at State gives you a ready template with an owl. You see the owl in this picture. The owl is on the box, in the box, over the box, under the box, and you don't even need to switch to the mother tongue, but you can use just English, because as you know, as I was taught, to use English as much as possible in your class. Only if once I was the presentation, but actually there is no like a certain approach to this, and I asked one presenter who is the author of Speak Out, because I was at the presentation of Speak Out editions. I wanted to clarify for myself whether to buy these books or not, and I got acquainted with one British, with the teacher from Great Britain, and I asked them such a question: do we have to switch? Do we have to use English all the time in our class, or to switch to our mother tongue? And he said that if you can't explain it off the bat, you have to use your mother tongue. So some complicated phenomena, some complicated things, yes. But if you can explain it in English, and everybody understands all these things in English, you can use them. You can speak English, and you can deliver all the information in English. So it's not a big deal. So here is like the example of prepositions. Also, like you see an owl on the tree, and here is the owl is going across. So it's even like there are some even sentences, like the blue owl flew past the green owl. So you and your students can understand the prepositions, the topic prepositions more clearly. So if everything is clear, so do you have any questions for me? In my class, I use a lot of presentations, especially if it's an offline class. and visual aids are really important. And you know, for to conduct classes in an efficient way, you have to move all the time, especially when the group is from like 8 till 12. You can move, you can speak with them more, more interaction in class, especially when you have grammar classes, not to get them bored, and to make them, to give them real knowledge. And I give directions, give guidance to my co-workers, to my subordinates, not to sit down in class, because I was also I was a teacher who liked to sit in the class and not to move. But once my principal in the Emirates told me, just it's not a good approach for teaching English, to sit and not to move. Though you can use also you can use gestures and to express yourself more. So a modern English teacher has to be a facilitator and not a very boring person. Do you have any questions? So as to my contacts, you can use my YouTube channel. You can write Mark here on YouTube. You can find me. Also, you can use a Facebook group. This is AZ English King Danilo University. This is a cool group because I often give, I always share some important information, some English textbooks, English materials, some funny videos, also some photos from my school, and I'm like open to interact with all the teachers, maybe to make up common projects in English, and I think that it's good for development. Also, you can find me on Facebook. My name is Markian here, who forgot, and you can also shoot an email to me if you don't use the Facebook. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn and on Instagram. Usually, I don't use this Instagram a lot, but for LinkedIn, I think that it's a good social network, and it's you can find a lot of opportunities for yourself. Also add as many groups as possible, English groups all over the world, and make friends with everybody, and ask them to speak, not just to chat, but to meet online. It's a really great opportunity, and sometimes even native speakers are ready to give classes for free, like, because for this week 2 native speakers just offered me they wanted to give me some classes, or just a simple conversation, like discussions, and I even refused. I refused because I didn't want to take their time, but really on these groups you can find a lot of interesting people. Okay, guys, I don't want to take a lot of time and beat around the bush, and thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions. I'm ready to respond to all of them.
Так, я вже підключилася. Так, не бачу, що хтось писав якісь питання. Ну, дякую, Маркіян, за вебінар. Насправді, корисного дуже для себе. Так, я вже підключилася. Так, не бачу, що хтось писав якісь питання. Я чую себе, я трошки скручу звук. Отже, друзі, ми з вами сьогодні дуже так наполегливо, я б сказала, попрацювали, тому що у нас було 3 спікери, можна сказати, 3 вебінари і такі об'ємні, такі інформативні. Я сподіваюся, ви все це собі розкладете по поличках. Ми з вами продовжимо завтра. Завтра ми будемо говорити з Тетяною і ще один вебінар буде з Іриною, нашим психологом. Всі ці матеріали, про які згадували всі спікери, включно з Маркіяном, будуть вам надіслані і посортовані на Google диску у четвер. Сім'ї розійшлються у четвер. Дякую за вашу активність. Маркіян, ще раз дякую за вебінар і до нових зустрічей. Сім'ї розійшлються у четвер. Дякую за вашу активність. Маркіян, ще раз дякую за вебінар. Дякую. І до нових зустрічей.